Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's daily show, This Is Nashville, engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. From East Nashville to Natchez Trace, from Radnor Lake to Hermitage, residents often have run-ins with the weird, wonderful, wild turkey. Now get your minds out of the liquor cabinet. I'm talking about the bird. The wild turkey's significance to this country and our environment cannot be understated. And the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency needs our help to keep it thriving. Why is the wild turkey so important to our ecosystem? Our first guest is here to help us understand the practical relevance of the turkey today and tell us how we can help preserve it. Roger Shields is with the Wild Turkey Program coordinator for the state of Tennessee and lives, breathes, and herds turkeys. Roger, thanks for being here. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you, Khalil. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Really happy to have you. Okay, so is it true that you're the one who gets the calls about turkeys in neighborhoods?
I'm one of many who gets calls, probably. Our county officers are kind of our first line of defense, so usually they're the ones that get most of the calls and respond to those situations, but I do get a few of them as well.
What's the craziest wild turkey story you have experienced?
For situations like that, I remember getting a call. This was back when I was working in Florida, but there was a guy that called and he said, he sounded very panicked, and he's like, I can't get out of my car. There's a crazy wild turkey outside my car. Won't let me out. He was meter reader or something like that. And he didn't get out. And he just held the phone up to his window. He rolled his window down a little bit and held his phone up. And I could hear this. It was a big gobbler and he was going crazy, fight. He was in fight mode, this gobbler was, and he was making all kinds of purring and aggressive noises. And I could hear it over the phone. I just was like, oh man, this guy's kind of, The caller was definitely scared and didn't know what to do. But yeah, that was a different one.
That was definitely a different one. I understand that turkeys have a wingspan as large as 6.5 feet, right?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, probably not quite 6.5, but they're maybe 4. But they're big. Yeah,
they
big birds. And the adult gobblers, when they're standing upright with their heads up, they're 4 feet tall, so they can be intimidating.
Okay. All right, here's a practical question for you. Why are wild turkeys so important? Why should we care about them?
Well, from my standpoint, in wildlife, I feel like all species are important. They're all part of the conservation, the network of animal life, of wildlife, of nature. And so they have an important role just in the fact that any other wildlife has an important role. But, turkeys, they serve as both prey and predator. So they help eat insects and things like that, but they're also a source of food for the things that prey on them. So it's all part of the balance of life in my mind.
What are some of the major predators, aside from humans, that turkeys are on the lookout for?
Depending on the stage of life, we talk about everything in the woods is trying to eat a turkey, it seems like. So when they're eggs, you've got skunks and raccoons and possums and fox that are trying to eat them. When they become little babies, after they've hatched, then you've got, still fox and coyotes and bobcats, and then you start having the hawks that want to eat them, and even the adults. Bobcats are good predators or bad predators of them. Hawks, owls can even take them. So there's a litany of things out there that are trying to get them, which is what makes them so wary, because they're always got their eyes out for a potential predator coming after them.
I was about to say that, like when you have such a long list of folks trying to eat you, no wonder you might be a little bit ornery with the parking meter person.
Well, in that case, what happens with turkeys in those situations is they actually start to relate humans as another turkey. And turkeys, their social order is a pecking order, like chickens have pecking orders. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to exert dominance over other birds. And so when they see a person and they're thinking of it as like another turkey, that's a big male. He's trying to dominate everything around him. And so that person just becomes another bird to dominate.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's pretty interesting. Is it true that turkeys almost went extinct?
I don't know about extinct, but their numbers were very, very low throughout the United States.
What happened?
Yeah, a lot of things kind of compounding, I think. So definitely some habitat alteration as settlers started to move west and clearing land. That affected them. People hunting them and hunting, maybe even some market hunting where they were selling the meat back to, places, businesses along the East Coast and things like that in the big cities. And then just, who knows what all maybe affected it, but probably those two things mostly just the hunting and the habitat change.
The population has been able to bounce back, though.
Yeah, because that kind of the low point would probably been in the early 1900s, 1930s, and then it kind of registered, everybody realizing that the numbers were really low. So beginning about the 1950s, there was major efforts to try and restore them. Initial efforts used captive reared birds, which didn't do very well. We spent probably 20 years dealing with that. And finally, in the late 60s, early 70s, as a whole, countrywide, as a whole, we got into realizing that you trap wild birds from where there still are some and you move them to new places. And that really took off. So about 2000, early 2000s, most states had wrapped up their restoration programs.
Okay, and now you and the TWRA are on the job. How do you and the TWRA, how do you maintain and care for the populations of wild turkeys we have in the state?
Oh, we try to monitor their numbers. We do that primarily in two ways. We look at harvest numbers. We kind of assume that harvest tracks their population numbers, and so if we just try and keep an idea of how harvest is going, and that helps us with some kind of an idea of how many turkeys are out there. But then we also have the summer survey that we do, and that tries to give us an information on reproduction, because reproduction is really what's driving these populations. If you have good reproduction, then you expect, especially a couple of years in a row, that your population will go up. And if you have really bad reproduction year after year, your population is going to come down. So we've done that as staff since probably the 1980s. As we were getting into that restoration, we started doing these summer surveys just to kind of know how things were going. And we pair those two pieces of information. Those are main two. We have other things that we look at as well.
Okay, so I want to talk about hunting for a second. Because, turkey hunting is often brought up when we think about wild turkey. How does hunting play into population care? Is it something that you try to mitigate, or do you encourage it?
Well, we really do encourage hunting as a sport, as something that helps people get outdoors and enjoy the wildlife. So if you think about, again, how their biology is, the males, which is primarily what's being harvested, they don't really contribute too much to the rearing of the young. They breed, and then the hens do really all the care they sit on the eggs and they raise the young. So, it doesn't take that many males. So there's a harvestable surplus is kind of how you word it.
Okay.
What we think of it as. And so as long as there's plenty of birds out there, we encourage hunting, and it's kind of a good pastime for people. Plus it's a really good, healthy food for people to put on their table.
Are there regulations to help to keep it out of hand?
Yeah, of course. We have certain seasons, so you can only hunt during certain times of the year. We have a season in the spring, which is kind of the most popular, and then we have a season in the fall, which is not as popular anymore. It used to be the big popular season, way back. But we have those seasons, and then we have what we call bag limits. So you can only harvest so many birds each year. And right now, we used to have a bag limit of 4. It's come down. Now we're at 2. So we do try to kind of monitor how many birds are being harvested off the landscape.
And it's males only?
Right, yep.
How can you tell a male from a female?
Their heads coloration and feathering is different. The one that most people kind of can easily identify is the beard. We call it a beard. It's actually modified feathers, kind of a tuft of that comes off of their chest, basically where their neck meets their body. And it's just this beard. It grows throughout their life, and a big mature male is going to have one that's probably 8 to 10 inches long.
Okay.
So that's the main thing. They have spurs. Gentleman was talking earlier about, the big males having these spurs. They're a little harder to see if they're out in vegetation, but yeah, that's another thing that separates. Most hens do not have spurs. A few hens will have beards, like 7% maybe of the population hens will have beards, but most of them don't.
Okay, so wild turkeys are all across the state of Tennessee, but there's different habitats across our state. What's an ideal habitat for wild turkeys? What does that look like?
Yeah, so they're what we call generalist species, so they can accommodate a lot of different types of plant communities. But what they really need is a mix of wooded cover with openings. They roost at night in trees, and they're therefore somewhat dependent on there being trees in their home range where they live. But they also depend on these openings, because openings, when the sun can reach the ground, it allows vegetation on the ground to grow. So you get grasses and flowers and what we call forbs. And that supports them, both the plant itself, but also the insects that occur in those plants. So they really need both. They typically are going to do well when they can nest in kind of real lush, thick vegetation at ground level. But then for raising their poults, they need it a little bit more open so that the poults can run around and get through all that vegetation, but still have, plants that are harboring insects for the little ones to eat. So it is and that's why here in central Tennessee, we have the greatest density of wild turkeys, because we have such a good mix of that forest with openings. And yeah.
I'm curious, how long does the poults, you call them? So those are turkey chicks?
Yep.
That's a really cool, cute name. How long does it take them to grow to full-grown adulthood?
So probably by 4 or 5 months, they're about the same size as a hen. And, so it's interesting, when they're first hatched, they can't fly, but because there's such a pressure on them from a prey standpoint, they're getting eaten by everything. The longer they stay where they can only be on the ground, the higher their mortality rate. So they have developed the ability to learn to fly really quickly. They can start to fly at about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Little short hop flights and stuff. Once they get up off the ground, their survival goes way up. And they grow really fast that first couple months. I mean, they're going from, 3 inches maybe to, within about 4 or 5 months, the same size as the hen.
Wow.
So, yeah, they grow really fast.
The wonders of evolution. Okay, so how can folks promote like a healthy turkey population? Is this a case of if you build it, will they come type of thing?
To a large extent, I would say, if you've got good habitat, but you're an island and everything around you is, for whatever reason, not conducive, you're going to have a hard time drawing turkeys in. But if they have any kind of connection, a river corridor that they can follow, it seems like most oftentimes they find those areas that are conducive to what they're looking for, and they'll find it. But what can people do if you've got a decent size of property? I know a lot of people like to keep their property very clean looking, right? They like to mow it or bush hog it, and that makes it look nice to us, but it's not very nice looking to a wild turkey. So if people can wait until the latter part of the summer or even the fall to do that annual bush hogging, that would benefit turkeys, both because they're not destroying that nesting cover they need, and they're not potentially killing a hen on a nest, and they're not potentially killing the poults that are running around in that vegetation. So that'd be one thing that people could do. Okay,
you're encouraging Tennessee residents to submit reports of turkeys they've seen from now until August 31st, the end of the month. Tell us, why do you need these civilian observation reports?
Well, like I said earlier, we've done these summer observation surveys as staff since like the 1980s, but our staff there's just not enough of us to get good coverage of the state. We can get, estimates of reproduction and kind of having a feel for what happened at the statewide level, but if we try to drill down smaller than that, we really don't have enough observations. Some counties, we don't even have officers or we don't get any observations for those counties. So we've asked the public to help us out, give us reports of when they are seeing turkeys, and that helps us get more confidence in what we're estimating, reproduction was that year.
How can folks report the turkeys they see?
Okay, they can. There's a couple ways, but if you go to our website, tn.gov/TWRA/turkey obs. So that's TURKEYOBS, little abbreviation for observations. That'll take them to our website. It gives kind of the background of this survey, what's involved, how they can participate, and there's a link there to the actual form if they have a sighting they want to report to us.
Okay, listeners, we will have that link on the web post for this episode at WPLN.org and thisisnashville.org. One last question for you. If I'm out there, what are some protocols that I should use if I see a turkey? I definitely should get out of the car and things like that, right?
Oh, if you are if you're observing turkeys and you want to because we really want you to be able to identify what you're seeing down to, if it's an adult male or if it's a hen or if it's a hen with young. We'd really like to know what kind of age class those poults are. And so if you're able to pull over, like say you're in your car and you can pull over and just kind of watch them and observe them for a minute. If you've got binoculars, that's even better. Most people don't carry binoculars with them, but yeah, if you can do that, that's better. But just kind of, you don't have to approach them real close. We're not asking you to go and try and get closer to them.
You don't need to tag them.
Yeah, exactly. And but just try and get a good observation and then tell us what you saw. And if you aren't confident what you saw, just report them as unknowns. I just saw 13 birds. I don't know what they are. They're unknown to me, what age or gender they were, sex they were. That's fine. Just tell us what you saw.
I have a feeling you might be creating a lot of wild turkey experts in the process.
Yeah, we'll hope so. If you're not comfortable with ID, there is also some tutorial on that website to kind of help you know what you're looking at.
Okay. Roger Shields is a biologist and coordinator of the Wild Turkey Program in the Division of Wildlife and Forestry for the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Roger, again, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by a turkey hunter and learn how hunting wild turkeys is beneficial to preserving the species. We'll be right back.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Akolona, and this is Nashville. Today, we're talking turkeys, not jive turkeys, but wild turkeys. Our first guest, Roger Shields, mentioned hunting as being a major part of the efforts to preserve the wild turkey. And our next brings a lived experience to this dynamic. But first, let's listen to contributor Leslie Eiler Thompson as she goes out at 4 a.m. with a local Nashvillian and longtime turkey hunter to experience it firsthand.
Wild turkey people are different, and they know it. And they're proud of it.
Turkey hunters are different hunters. And there's a great quote, and I think Archibald Rutledge, who was a writer from South Carolina, said, "Some men are mere hunters and others are turkey hunters." People say it's a damn disease. Time that we spent in the woods or out in the field or wherever talking to turkeys, observing turkeys, letting them hunt us, it's just a chess match.
That's Brent Rogers. He's a wild turkey historian and call collector who lives in Iowa. He's sort of the first call anyone makes when they need a credible source for the history of the bird and the ones who hunt it. When you talk to turkey hunters, this phrase, chess match, will come up because it's just the most accurate way to describe the idea of hunting a turkey. You're trying to be one step ahead of your opponent and make a move that will catch them off guard while still paying attention to the immediate moves. After numerous interviews, talking to top fans of the wild turkey and hearing stories that gave me goosebumps, I had a very strong urge to take myself out in the dark of morning and find a turkey. There's one problem though. I don't know how to play turkey chess. I needed more than just knowledge. I needed a guru. I needed Farmer Billy.
All right, I'll carry all the equipment.
Billy is a farmer in Nashville. He's been turkey hunting his whole life. and he loves it.
Morning, Malcolm. Morning, ladies. You tell him, Malcolm.
Malcolm and the ladies are a herd of brown and white cows, extremely curious about these two passersby emerging from the dusk of the 5 a.m. hour. Billy leads our hunting party of two around the cow fence to an open area, and he starts teaching me the ways of the turkey.
They normally come up this little fence line right here. He likes to strut down there along that tree line because he can see down in the woods, but he can also see up here on the hill.
We settle into the forest floor at the base of a tree, and Billy begins the match.
He just gobbled right there. Yeah, he's on the ground down there. See, he gobbled again. He's coming this way.
And then Billy did something that blew my mind. That sound is coming from his mouth. He's mimicking something called spitting and drumming, the sound toms make when they're strutting, and he's using it to start a competition with the other tom, making him think that there's another male up the hill. What you can't hear in that moment is that when the turkey gobbles, Billy proudly, satisfyingly looks up at the sky and smiles. Billy and I sat under the tree for 20 minutes, calling out to the gobblers and getting a response. Just waiting. And then there was nothing. No response. Our Tom went silent.
Yes, he got totally quiet.
Billy wondered if maybe he saw us, or a coyote got to him, or something upset him. He just quit.
He just quit all of a sudden. Oh, no.
Oh yes, we didn't see a single turkey that day. We lost the chess match. Checkmate.
I see, with it being late season like this, he's probably not stupid.
And I guess it would make sense that the ones that are still alive at the end of the season might be the smartest ones.
Or the luckiest bastards in the world. Because sometimes luck is better than being good, you know what I'm saying?
It seems to me that this is the reason why a successful hunt doesn't involve tagging a turkey, bringing it home. Because the entire experience was so worth my time. Waking up an hour before the sun rose, hearing roosters crowing, walking in the dark on a dirt path, seeing ducks on the pond with their babies. Billy told me that some people think he's crazy. I think he's lucky, maybe even as lucky as the turkey that eluded us.
You can hear a lot more of producer Leslie's turkey adventure in her mini-series on Wild Turkey Conversation, releasing next week. We'll link to it on our web post. Now, to talk more about the experience of hunting, we have Wendy Hunter in the studio with us. Wendy is a hunter herself and mentors those who want to hunt too. Wendy, welcome to This Is Nashville. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate it. Okay, so tell me this. How did you come to hunting? What got you started?
I started turkey hunting about 18 years ago with my dad. I was a mom with 3 kids, and they all had sports and hobbies. And I was like, I need to find one myself. I was about 37 years old when I started hunting, and just started hunting with my dad. That was my first hunt. So.
What was it like the first time you went out on a hunt?
Well, I got to correct myself. My very first successful hunt was with a friend of mine that worked for TWRA, and she was my mentor. So it was incredible. we hauled a humongous blind down to the Harpeth River bottoms and set up. And Paulette was an amazing mentor to me. And we got to sit in a blind and call a turkey in, watched a bald eagle on the Harpeth River. But we called that bird in, and I got my first turkey that day, and that was back in 2006.
And you've been running ever since. Okay, question. You emphasize successful hunt. How often are you finding success when you go out on the hunt? Is it 50% more or less?
Oh, it would be less.
So they're really that smart. It really is a chess match, huh?
It is. It's a challenge. That's what I love about it. I deer hunt as well, but turkey hunting is my passion. I mean, it's a challenge. It's you're getting to interact with the bird. It's not like deer hunting where you're waiting for the deer to walk by. You're getting to actually interact with the species and get them to do what they don't normally do in nature, and that's come to the hen.
Mm-hmm. Now you're mentoring new hunters. What made you want to do this?
I think because of how people invested in me. I've had several mentors, from my dad to Paulette to my friend Max in East Tennessee and Mr. Harvey in New York. I mean, I've had a lot of people that poured into me, and I learned from them. I absorbed it like a sponge. I mean, I would literally take notes when they were talking about turkeys. So I just love getting to share that passion with new hunters and maybe teach them something so that they can be as successful as I've been in the past.
So let's say you're taking me in as a mentee. What are some of the first lessons that you are sure to teach me about turkey hunting?
Sure to teach you's funny. I can suggest things to you. Your learning capabilities are going to be how much you want to do it.
Okay.
I've taken some people that after the first hunt they're like, oh, I don't know that this is for me. And then some people are just they love it. So I think things that I would teach you is one, how far a turkey can see. I mean, they can see way across the field. I mean, hundreds of yards. So you can't move on a turkey. I mean, if you can see them, they can literally see you. Mm-hmm. So you have to wear I say you have to wear the camo. I've been the exception to every rule in turkey hunting, but you need to wear the camo, the face covering, all that. You need to have a backdrop behind you so that you're not silhouetted. There's just a lot of things to learn about it, but it's fun.
So you hunt other things. Are turkeys the most cunning prey you've ever encountered?
I think they're very smart. You can educate them by doing things wrong, and they have a sonar. I mean, I know the biologists could speak better to this, but when they hear you call at them, they know exactly where to come, and they'll eventually find you. So if they're interested in what they're hearing. So they're definitely the smartest species I've ever hunted.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking this hour about wild turkeys and their importance to our ecosystem. My guest is hobbyist hunter, Wendy Hunter. Okay, so tell me this. You just said a couple of things that are really surprising to me. What would surprise people the most about turkey hunting and the hunters themselves?
Maybe something would surprise people most is it's not easy. For someone to think, oh, I can go out and get a turkey today because, I had all the gear, I had the perfect situation and set up. You're going to hunt a lot before you get your first turkey. My first hunt was with TWRA did back in 2006. It was an all women's turkey hunt. And I didn't harvest a bird that day, but my mentor that day, I mean, we hunted in a blind. What they call run and gun. It's where you hear the bird and you're literally going and chasing after them. That's safe to do if you're on private property.
Okay.
But you don't always get a turkey. It's a bonus when you get to, but it's not something that happens all the time.
Okay, so before we started talking, we heard the clip of Leslie and Billy out there hunting, being near a turkey, but then the turkey kind of gave up and took off. Is that experience pretty accurate is that what you're saying? It's normally most of the time you're going to go out there, you might get close to a turkey, you might sense one close by, but no chance you're going to see it.
Well, there are a lot of factors to play into that. I mean, if there's a predator around, they can go off. If you make a mistake in calling, you can run them off. If you move, you can run them off. There are a lot of things to mess up your hunt. Yeah, it just depends on what's going on.
What's your favorite part of hunting?
Oh my goodness. I could go on for a long time about that. I'm not a morning person, but I will get up in the morning early to hunt.
Okay.
And my husband can attest to that. My husband can attest to that. I love getting out there early in the morning, watching the world wake up. It's amazing it's like God cues the lights and the sound at the same time. And, all the birds start chirping and the sun's coming up and then you hear a gobbler on the roofs. And to this day, I mean, after hunting 18 years, when you hear that first gobble, it sends a chill down your spine and your heart up in your throat. And I've told a turkey hunter one time, he said, "Oh, I got got my birds and I got my limit." He wasn't excited about it at all. And I went over to him and rubbed arms with him. And I said, hold on a second. Let me rub some off on you. I said, because if you're not excited about it, you need to stay home. So I just love watching the world wake up and getting to interact with the turkey. And then, sometimes you're able to harvest one or you're able to share that experience with someone else. And it's just awesome passion.
All right. So what do you like least about hunting?
Probably the getting up early in the morning. I work at UPS in Nashville, and when I was working part-time, I'd get off early in the afternoon at 2:00. So if I had my things laid out, we leased 200 acres behind our home, and if I had my things laid out, I could literally be in the woods by 3. So my favorite time was turkey hunting was in the afternoon. So,
okay.
Yeah, some mornings aren't so bad, but I like afternoon hunts better.
Okay. Afternoon hunts are for the non-morning people. Okay, that's noted. All right. So like Billy, Billy made a call with this mouth. You can also do the same thing. Can you give us an example of a turkey call that you can do?
Sure. So here's a yelp. So this is what a hen sounds like when she's calling.
Okay. How'd you learn how to make this call?
Oh, that's a funny story. My dad was trying to teach me how to use a slate. So there's several different kinds of calls, like a slate call, a box call, a mouth call. And I wasn't successful at any of those, but our family sings and I can hear pitch. So the pitch that he was making with his slate call, I can mimic with my voice. So I kind of learned from my dad, but inadvertently, I couldn't make the call with the actual call, but I could learn to do it with my mouth.
Is any other calls that you can do?
Not proficiently.
Okay.
I don't want to do it. There's a Kiki run, and my daughter can gobble amazingly. We used to go to the NWTF convention and walk around to the call makers, and she would gobble and I would yelp, and they would tell us to go away. We were bad for business because we could do it without their calls.
Make sure you have you or your daughter along with you if you are going to take a hunt. So final question for you is this. If someone wanted to learn how to hunt turkeys, where should they start?
I mean, there are a lot of videos out there. There are a lot of hunting videos. I would say, my story is finding a mentor, and the TWRA, when they had that women's turkey hunt, I met some of my best friends, and they are still my best friends from hunting. So, there are workshops. The Outdoor Women of Nashville helps put on a women's turkey hunt. So I know those events for women, but I would just say hook up with a friend that that turkey hunts and ask them to carry you along.
That's right. And bring some coffee for the early morning rise.
Absolutely.
Wendy Hunter is a hobby hunter. Wendy, thank you so much for being with us, and good luck to you the next time you go out there hunting, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we're going to take one last break. When we come back, we'll look into the history of the wild turkey here in Middle Tennessee by exploring the bird's relationship with the ancient indigenous communities in the region. We'll also explore some of the spiritual significance of this beloved bird. You can join the conversation by tweeting us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. Today we're talking turkeys, and our final guests today will help us understand the turkey in a historical context, particularly for the oldest inhabitants of this land, the indigenous peoples. Tom Kunesh is the president of the Tennessee Ancient Sites Conservancy, which protects and educates about prehistoric and Native American sites in Tennessee. And Tanya Perez is an archaeologist who worked at a dig site in Nashville for a decade, studying the remains there, which included a large amount of domesticated turkeys. She's joining us by phone from Florida. Tom and Tanya, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Tom, I want to start with you. Tell us about the indigenous sites that became archaeological digs.
All of this area was inhabited. And so every place that Nashville exists on is and can be an archaeological dig. I'm thinking especially around Browns Creek that had over 6,000 burials taken out of there for houses. And all of downtown that had, there were temple mounds here, essentially the same as, or the equivalent of a cathedral. It was a ceremonial center, and those have all been destroyed. So every place around here is a potential site and tells us something about who was living here 500, 1,000, 8,000 years ago.
Now, there's the site just east of Cool Springs. It's actually known by several names. The Fuchs Mound is one, and Boiling Springs is another. Can you explain the variation on the names, and what should we be calling it for the purposes of this episode?
Well, that's a good question. They are essentially the same site. And the question then becomes, why would we be using white people's names for native sites when it's a ceremonial mound? It's a flat-top Mississippian mound, and it was a city center, and the people lost, or the people died off. We can say it was a drought that made them move, just like over at Mound Bottom. And then white people came into this land and said, we don't know the names of these places. So what are we going to call? Well, that's Fuchs Place, so why don't we call it after him? We'll just say those mounds down by Fuchs Place. And then it just became Fuchs Mounds. But now there's a movement, as you know, about land acknowledgement and land back, that says we should acknowledge these sites as native sites, not as native sites with white names, but as fully native. And so there's an old place in on the other side of Franklin called Kellytown, and that's now has a Chickasaw name, i.e. Tifama or something like that.
Okay.
So when you, depending upon who you talk with, you'll say Fuchs Mound, and then if you want to be more respectful, I would start suggesting that people call it Boiling Springs Mound.
Okay, so Tanya, why was Boiling Springs selected as a dig site? And tell me, how did you come to be involved?
So this project that I was involved with, I did not work in the field with this project. My role was in the lab doing lab analysis, but this was from a late 1990s TDOT, Tennessee Department of Transportation project, where they were going to kind of widen and make the curve of Moore's Lane, which is State Road 441, to be less severe. And excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold.
It's okay.
So because it's a federally funded project, there was cultural resource management mitigation done, and that included a complete excavation of the right-of-way of the project area. So it's not on the mounds, it's west of the mounds. And the archaeologists that excavated it found a number of structures, footprints of houses, basically. And so the material I analyzed came mostly from pits where debris would have been put, trash, call them trash pits, and from around the houses, out, like away from the mounds.
Mm. Now, I understand that you worked on a site, you worked with this for years, and the site had found a lot of turkey remains. Is it rare to find, the amount of animal remains like you did?
It's all relative, right? Because in archaeology, we don't necessarily, every site is different, and we don't necessarily get when we excavate, we're not recovering everything that was eaten there or thrown away there, just because of the nature of how sites become buried and become invisible. So in terms of the amount of turkey at this site, it seems striking because the preservation of the bone is really good. And we had a lot of nearly complete remains. And also, this is a big site. Like Tom was saying, there are a lot of people that used to live here, right? Thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. And so there were a lot of people that lived in the village here. So there was a lot of food waste discard.
Now, Tom, tell me this. What was the significance of the bird to the indigenous peoples who were here all that time ago?
We don't know, but we have an idea because of the gorgets that have been found all around here. We have gorgets of pileated woodpeckers. We have gorgets of peregrine falcons. We have gorgets of turkeys. And we can only guess because none of that. First of all, we should talk about the periods of time when culture died down. 1450 around here, Mound Bottom, places collapsed. And then when 1540, when Hernando de Soto came through here and introduced European diseases in here, culture collapsed again. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge break between what we know from 600 years ago, 700 years ago, to what we think we know now. Mm-hmm. And so we have these gorgets, we have these drawings like two turkeys facing each other. And they look like male turkeys. Are they fighting? Are they? Is it a dance? Is it representing war, battle? But they were known to be fierce and fighting, so we don't know exactly what they mean.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking this hour about the history and relationship between the ancient indigenous communities of Middle Tennessee and the wild turkey. My guests are Tanya Perez and Tom Kunesh. I assume that members of the community, the inhabitants, were eating them, but I'm questioning what other significance may it had. May it had a potential spiritual significance? What was it a sign of?
We don't know.
We're still trying to figure out.
There are stories, there are myths. There's, Morning Star, and we just don't know. The pileated woodpeckers, people think because of the red crest that it was blood and it was fighting. And then we have these other beautiful gorgets of people taking heads off, holding a cut head. And the amount of bloodshed that's in there, we don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Have I shown you that picture of that gorget?
No, I'd love to see it. I'll describe it to the listeners.
Okay. Here, that's 4 pileated woodpecker heads around the cardinal points.
Okay.
And some say they were colored, but that's on a marine shell from down like the coast of Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, and they cut those designs into it.
In the center, it seems to be like a cross surrounded by a circle, which is also surrounded by flares. maybe the sun, it looks
the
like?
sun. It's interesting that the Yuchi people, who most people don't know here, most people think this area was Cherokee, which is, they never came here. A friend of mine says, Tom, we Cherokee, I didn't say that we lived here. I said that we were just really good real estate agents.
Okay.
So the people that did were the Muskogee and the Yuchi. And archaeologists won't go that far to say that because we don't have names. We don't have it anything saying that this is a Muskogee or a Yuchi site, but because of the Cherokees calling them Anikusa and the Kusa being the chiefdom of the Muskogee, that we attribute these things to them.
Okay. Can you describe what a gorget is and what it's used for?
Yeah, a gorget is in a way a piece of jewelry carved into a round cut piece of marine shell, and a figure is cut into that. And it can be a warrior figure, it can be a lot of animal figures, it can be the eye, the falcon eye that we were talking about before, and probably as a piece of status jewelry for, it could be chiefs, it could be temple priests, it could be, we just don't know. Although I think archaeologists have a better idea because they associate, they find those kind of gorgets with high status burials, and they could probably say something more. Tanya could.
Yeah. Now, Tanya, can you tell me this? You know, when I go out and I experience nature and I have run-ins, something that I always used to do is look up the spiritual significance, particularly for what it meant to the indigenous peoples of that land. When I lived in New Mexico, I would be running from skinks, lizards, hawks, owls, skunks, roadrunners, all of it. They would come up and have a conversation with me, and I'd look up what it meant. And so I looked up, for today's episode, I kind of looked up what the turkey represented according to Navajo culture. And there it says a deep care for family and community, generosity. What's mine is yours is that type of philosophy. Now, I know to understand the exact spiritual significance of what the turkey meant to this region is really hard for us to discover, as Tom pointed out. But Tanya, what did your findings tell us about the significance of the bird for the people of these lands?
Yeah, so the project that I worked on, that I developed, was looking at the turkey remains that we had that were excavated from the Fuchs site. When I first started looking at them, I noticed that they were bigger than our modern comparative skeletal collections. And so that stood out to me as being something kind of weird. Why would they be bigger? Because domesticated animals typically are the ones that are bigger than their wild counterparts. And this looked like we had wild turkeys that were bigger than the domesticated ones. So one of my students, Kelly Ledford, and I, when we were at Middle Tennessee State University, we did a study where we did measurements of all of the remains that we had, and we looked at the occurrence of cut marks and burning and other types of use wear. And what we ultimately found was that it seems possible that these turkeys, while not domesticated in the 1200s, 1300s, they were definitely being managed, right? So the indigenous peoples that lived in this area in Middle Tennessee, they relied on turkeys for a lot of things, food, of course, but also feathers, and their beards could have been used as well for ornamentation or in jewelry, and also their bones were useful for tools. So the fact that they were so important to these people that they wanted to make sure, right, that they were respectful and had, were not taking more than there was. So they were managing these populations.
All right, Tom, real quick, I have a minute left. This conversation kind of brings up the idea of preserving ancient sites so we can conserve history of a place. What benefits do we receive by doing this, and what can it teach us? I got about 30 seconds. Sorry.
I think of it as us being able to reconstruct history, that it may not be so important to white people, but to indigenous people, especially Muskogee and Yuchi people of this area and the Muskogean-related tribes, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, that having lost it, we can relearn it. we can find out what these things, what the images were, what stories have persevered, and what we can reintegrate them into religion today.
And relearning it will be beneficial to everyone.
Yes.
All right. I want to thank you so much for being here. Tom Kunesh is the president of the Tennessee Ancient Sites Conservancy, and Tanya Perez is an associate professor of anthropology who specializes in zoo archaeology at Florida State University. Again, thanks to you both for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thanks to you.
Thank
you. This is great. All right. Thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Leslie Eiler Thompson. Thanks again for your help. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operators, Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Instagram and tell us what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. You can also call to leave us a message at 615-751-2500. Leave us any kind of message, even if you just want to say gobble gobble. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.